won freedom's fight. Oh, one strong and free. Africa is our own motherland. Fashion is embraced by God's good hand. Let us our people and one nation is our cry. Dignity and peace needs Zambia's skies. Like a noble eagle in its flight, Zambia, praise to thee. Oh, one strong and free. Praise be to praise be, praise be, praise be. Zambia, 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 free men we stand under the flag of our land. Zambia, praise to thee. Oh, one strong and free.
Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father, mighty God, Jehovah, the Almighty God, the God who changes not, according to the Bible in Hebrews 13 verse 8, you say Jesus is the same. We are here for you, my Creator. Thank you, my Father, for this precious thing, oh God, as I continue communicating with you and continue giving, mighty God, our President, Harry Kalaba, in your holy hand. Continue to give him wisdom, understanding, protection. Guide us, oh God. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much, my MCC. Before I invite the President to go straight into what he has for the nation today, let me just acknowledge the presence of some important people here. I want to acknowledge the presence of the Citizen Space President, Mr. Harry Kalaba. I also recognize the presence of members of the Central Committee, members of the Citizen Space Party who are here, distinguished members of the press, and everyone who is watching this press briefing on various platforms, on Facebook and other social media platforms. So without wasting time, sir, I am inviting you to address the meeting.
Thank you. The chairperson of the Citizens First, in absentia, Honorable Epson Momba, is working hard for us. He's in Eastern Province. The Deputy Secretary General of our party, Mr. Chintu, is here. Members of the Central Committee are here present. Distinguished guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for taking the time to attend today's press briefing that was called at short notice in response to the President's challenge to us as opposition leaders to provide credible alternatives to the challenges that the country is currently faced with. While we have a detailed manifesto that articulates our economic agenda for this country, we will resign ourselves to providing 7 key interventions that we are recommending as Citizens First to help the UPND government address some of the economic challenges that the President alluded to in his homily or media discourse. For those who took time to look at my Facebook page, you will agree with me that we did preempt both the tone and the content of what the President intended to talk about, and I must say that we were on point, as some, if not all the issues he talked about, are issues we had raised and anticipated in his oration. And more importantly, even he himself admitted that he sounded like a lecturer, and to many it turned out like an address of a highly educated headmaster to a middle-class assembly. It is therefore befitting that I present to you our briefing under the theme, Away from the Rhetoric. Here is the alternative. For avoidance of doubt and to reduce any potential misunderstanding, we would like to define rhetoric as language designed to have a persuasive or impressive effect, but which is often regarded as lacking in sincerity or meaningful content. Ladies and gentlemen, in our quest to respond to the President and provide workable alternatives, we will present to you 7 medium to short-term housekeeping interventions in light of the fact the UPND government has a very short runway between now and the 2026 elections, while at the same time lacks the financial resources to embark on capital-intensive projects. The 7 interventions we are recommending do not require significant financial injection, but rather the political will in putting in place the legal framework that will serve as the rails that will help catapult our economic engine. Our immediate interventions that the government should consider taking up as a matter of urgency are: 1, plugging revenue leakages, the mining sector. While the mining sector continues to be one of the key forex earners for the country, it is also one of the sectors that has the highest levels of seepages that in many instances have been facilitated by those in government. The Citizens First is concerned that after the UPND took over government, we have not seen any change in or willingness to address the issue of seepages arising from the mining sector. Instead, we have seen the mining houses receiving tax benefits that have further reduced the tax collection. What is ironic is that besides Zambia being one of the largest copper mining countries in the world, the country does not seem to have a mechanism of tracking the commodities that are mined from it. A Bank of Zambia report showed financial seepages of $630 million for cobalt and $4.7 billion for copper between the period 2015 and 2019. And what is worrying for the Citizens First is that besides the current government being aware of such seepages, they have made no attempt to plug these holes, but instead they have decided to extend further incentives to the mining houses that has continued to result in further reduction in revenue collection. Our recommendation in addressing this issue is to ensure that we deploy technology tracking and monitoring the quantity and types of minerals that are being mined. Whereas it is common knowledge even to those in government today that gold is one of the byproducts that is mined along with copper and cobalt, government has not taken interest to establish the quantities that are mined, let alone how much of it is sold out of the country. The Citizens First will clamp down on such seepages by setting up a mineral marketing bureau under the oversight of the Ministry of Finance to ensure that all minerals that are exported through the bureau are fully accounted for tax purposes. When this is implemented, it will significantly help the government to work towards a self-financing budget rather than seeking foreign aid and loan facilities all the time. What is evident, however, is that to do so requires a leadership that is not compromised or bonded to the mining giants in any way. To do what I'm talking about or what we are proposing today requires a leadership that is pragmatic. One that doesn't meet those mining conglomerates in the night, you have wine with them, and then during the day you began telling stories. The failure by government to provide answers to the challenges of Mopani and Konkola copper mines also goes to point to the extent to which they have failed in managing this very important sector. 2, mechanized agriculture. Agriculture is one of the pillars of the Citizens First, and we would like to recommend that government considers investing in mechanized agriculture if the nation is to transform into a prosperous middle-income nation by 2030. Otherwise, that vision will remain a pipe dream. Zambia has a lot of arable land and fresh water through which irrigation can be channeled to farming blocks. Through mechanized farming, the nation will increase its productivity and absorb the void that has been created by the Ukraine-Russia war. The previous government had embarked on an exercise of refurbishing the silos countrywide to ensure food security and safety. The challenge, however, still remains that while we seek agriculture as a means of economic diversity, the sector has not received a fair share of the budget allocation, as was evidenced by the just-ended farming season, which took Zambia from being a net exporter to being a net importer of agricultural commodities. The Citizens First is recommending to government to reverse this trend, increase crop production, as you can never have national security without food security. 3, strengthening of institutions of governance. The Citizens First understands the importance of oversight institutions as well as constitutional offices such as the Anti-Corruption Commission as well as the Drug Enforcement Commission. To arrest the cases of corruption that lead to revenue seepages in government and erodes confidence among stakeholders, the President should guarantee the independence of oversight institutions by ensuring that he allows them to operate with autonomy rather than the current situation where they are operating under his office and therefore restricted from taking action against erring controlling officers and senior government officials that are known to be close to him. We are yet to see close associates of the President being pursued. There have been several issues of corruption that have been reported about the President and his people. Those close to the President winning tenders. Nothing has happened. They have gotten away with it because they're under the purview of the Republican President.
Shame.
The Citizens First is calling for the UPND government and its leadership to address the current corruption instead of just focusing on corruption under the previous regime. A president that is committed to fighting corruption must take the lead in allowing for the independence of oversight institutions, and he must lead by ensuring that he protects whistleblowers, regardless of which side of the political divide they are coming from. We have seen whistleblowers having a big problem in this country.
Oh, yeah.
We have seen the President being the first to condemn whistleblowers because those that are perceived to be close to him are being mentioned.
Shame.
It's very sad for our country. You can't fight corruption with those double standards that the President is exhibiting. He needs to remain neutral, even when one of your own has been poked in the eyes. Let him wait for the process. We have had several examples in this country where one of the President's sons in this country was reported to the Anti-Corruption Commission, and that was President Sata's son. In 2011, was reported to the Anti-Corruption Commission. And when President Sata was asked whether he would permit that action to go ahead, he chased the SEC from his office and told them, why are you asking me if you have found something against such individual? Go ahead and investigate him. The President's son was put under an investigation. Examples are not far from here. But when you see a president being the first to say, no, that one is malicious, how can he say that? Then you know we have a suspect. We encourage our colleagues in the UPND to read The Cost of Corruption by Paulo Mauro, Paulo Medas, and Jean-Marc Fournier, September 2019. Addressing corruption alone can lead to an increase in revenue collection of over 10%, but it takes political will, which unfortunately is missing in the current government. This action alone would free up revenue, while at the same time create confidence within the cooperating partners who currently do not appreciate how their tax contributions end up being misappropriated. 4, employment creation through value addition. While we appreciate the enormity of the task, we in the CF feel the current government is not taking deliberate steps to create private sector-driven employment, but simply focusing on creating a bloated civil service. And I speak as a former civil servant myself. In two of his successive budget addresses to Parliament, the late Honorable Alexander Bichikwanda, may he so rest in peace, alluded to the structural misalignment of the country's budget. He presented the challenge to the nation through Parliament that one of the challenges we were faced with was a high expense nation that was attributed to the civil service by way of salaries and personal emoluments. The challenge that Honorable Alexander Bichikwanda was seeking to highlight over 7 years ago still remains a reality today and has since increased significantly under the UPND government. It is therefore ironic that the UPND government seeks to create employment by hiring more civil servants instead of supporting private enterprise and giving more incentives to Zambians, who will in turn create real employment. And when you are employing civil servants, don't just end at employing the health sector, you employ the teachers, you should extend it even to the agricultural sector. There are those that have not done medicine, those that have not done, what are you doing about them? We are proposing to you, as Citizens First, that can your approach be holistic? Can it be all-encompassing? So that even those who are at NRDC, even those that are doing carpentry, building at these colleges, can also be enveloped in the job creation that you keep on talking about every day. So we are proposing real employment, creating through prioritizing SMEs. Our ambition is to be deliberate in creating homegrown millionaires rather than seeking to help foreign entities to amass wealth at the expense of the majority citizens. Government must start looking at means of supporting value addition, especially within the extractive, the agriculture sectors, as well as the mining sector, which seem to have received a lot of incentives under the current regime. We need to have a reciprocal arrangement in place that will pass on benefits onto foreign mining houses that do value addition in Zambia. 5, make CDF functional, address legal issues. While the increase in CDF is a welcome move, we in the Citizens First have continued to contest that the manner in which it was implemented was rushed and shows clear lack of understanding of the way the government system operates. Our position is that government should have first started by harmonizing the ZPPA Act with the Local Government Act so as to address some of the procurement challenges that have hit the CDF funds, with some local authorities opting to break payments in order not to breach their spending thresholds. As a mitigation, we are proposing the following. 1, the Procurement Act be reviewed to cure the limitation it has that has restricted local authorities from making transactions above a particular threshold. 2, the Secretary to the Treasury appoints the town clerks and other designated council staff as controlling officers with mandate to transact in CDF at prescribed thresholds. 3, financial institutions be given incentives for operating in rural areas so as to allow for actual banking of CDF funds to be in the rural areas as opposed to along the line of rail, where most financial institutions are domiciled. The option of having regional banking licenses is something the central bank should consider implementing, where large multinational financial institutions insist on reducing their branch network at the expense of providing service in the rural areas. 4, from a long-term perspective, government must hasten the process of food centralization in order to develop capacity in most rural areas. This process can be supported through the provision of incentives for setting up prescribed institutions in rural parts of the nation. 6, prioritizing locals to spur local development and economic development. The richest countries in the world have a large number of SME-type organizations that their governments support in terms of business opportunities, as well as timely payments. In the case of Zambia, this has turned out to be the opposite, especially under the UPND government. Since the UPND was elected into office, they have held on to billions of kwachas owed to local contractors in the name of carrying out an audit. This action alone has resulted in many contractors losing their assets that they had pledged as collateral, while others have ended up going bankrupt.
Shame.
While the local contractors and suppliers have suffered the wrath of non-payment, foreign investors are adorned with incentives that make the country lose the much-needed revenue. The government must change its posture and start giving Zambians priority, as well as budget for the demolition of all outstanding monies owed to Zambian contractors, who in many instances are faced with stiff competition from competitors who access cheaper funds from their countries of origin. By prioritizing Zambians, government will not just be creating employment, but also address the challenges of capital flight in times of economic turbulence. This will also help stabilize our foreign exchange, as opposed to the current situation where most investors only maintain a petty cash account in the account and the rest of their funds are swept outside Zambia. In fact, Zambia has become a haven of money laundering through transfer pricing and other means of creative accounting. 7, honesty and integrity. The Citizens First believes that the starting point in addressing the ills of the nation must start with the leadership taking an honest and introspective view. The president must walk the talk. As in many things, he has remained the subject of fact-checking, and in most instances, his statements have not checked out to be the truth. The few examples which I will just give you now clearly demonstrate what we mean when we talk about honesty. 1, the Ndola Lusaka dual carriageway. You heard, all of you, yesterday, the president had said that he stopped the Lusaka Ndola dual carriageway. That was not true. The president made that claim that he stopped the construction of the dual carriageway between Lusaka and Ndola. This statement is not correct, as this decision of stopping that project was taken by the then Minister of Finance, Honorable Dr. Walianga Ndu, upon him taking up the position of Finance Minister. This is a position that is well known, and the president should have gone to the memos that are within his reach for him as head of state. It is also worth mentioning that as Finance Minister then, Dr. Walianga Ndu put to a stop all projects that were below 80% of construction, including the FTJ University, as a way of kickstarting the country's debt restructuring exercise. You see? 2, as the Citizens First, we would like to call out the president for misrepresenting facts in our call for him to travel to China to go and have a face-to-face negotiation with the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, over Zambia's debt. In his response, the president stated that Xi Jinping only meets 4 presidents in a year. Right now, they have a summit happening in China. I counted, there were not 4 presidents. This is not a correct position, and it leaves us to speculate as to why the head of state would elect to misinform the electorate who are calling for him to make time to travel to China, which is Zambia's biggest lender. Our view is that as head of state, the president must set the tone based on honesty and integrity, rather than seeking to score points through falsehoods at the expense of the suffering majority. As the CF, we believe having all hands on deck is important if we are to galvanize all the stakeholders and get the country on track for economic development. And to do that requires honesty and integrity in the manner in which the president deals with the citizens. Honesty and integrity, which means when you promise that you respect human rights, you cannot be giving contrary instructions at night against perceived opponents. What you agree to do at night, you must be able to stand by it during the day. And when opposition leaders highlight failures in your administration, you should not waste taxpayers' money by asking your operatives to produce their staff files so that you can find them with a guest to answer. This is the highest level of cowardice. When I made a press conference, I'm aware that the president, through his operatives, went to Foreign Affairs where I was to go and pick out a file of Harry Kalaba so that they can find me with a case to answer.
Shame.
But we want to tell the president that, in fact, if people didn't go through challenges, if people didn't go through those struggles, even our independence would not have been gotten.
For sure.
If Bakaunda went through those kind of things, we will go through them, and we'll go through them with a lot of joy. And we are prepared. So you can call for as many files as you want. We will not stop talking because we believe that this is the moment that Zambia has been waiting for.
For sure.
Additionally, we have seen the fanfare that the UPND government seemed to be engrossed in over the 20% partial disbursement of NAPSA funds, and would like to warn that this is very inconsistent, especially that the country is looking to reduce the retirement age to 55 years. This is a clear sign that this government does not care about the citizens of this nation and would either like to make them destitute in retirement or to send them to their early graves. The research we have carried out shows that the average retirement age worldwide is between 65 and 67 years. And to see a country seeking to play in the Champions League, going against what those in the Champions League are doing, leaves much to be desired. Full retirement age around the world, I can quickly give just a few statistics. In Australia, the life expectancy is 83 years, 9 months. They retire at 67. In Brazil, the life expectancy is 76, 5 months. They retire at the age of 65. In Canada, the life expectancy is 77. Yet they retire at 65. In China, the life expectancy is at 77. In Germany, in France, the life expectancy is at 83. They retire at 65. In China, the life expectancy is 70. They retire at 60. In Japan, the life expectancy is at 85. Please allow me to reiterate some of the issues we raised in the press briefing we had on Wednesday, 10th May 2023, by simply stating that our call to His Excellency, if he is to regain the confidence of the citizens, he needs to, 1, tell the people of Zambia, and in particular those on the Copper Belt, the truth if those games is playing with SCMIH. Because I can tell you the truth, after 2026, whatever is doing with SCMIH will be reversed. 3, understand that while free education is good, the cost of living is killing people, and immediate remedy is needed. 4, take action to address the shortages of drugs rather than using every available avenue to blame medical practitioners who are working under significant pressure. Yesterday we heard it was just blame game on the medical practitioners. You know, they are stealing medicine. Which medicine you have not bought? How can they steal? Five, stop paying lip service to political intolerance, especially during by-elections. During by-elections, he plays a lot of politics. And you might think, yes, we have found somebody who tells the truth. He doesn't tell the truth. 6, review your preference for foreigners, Mr. President, and foreign entities at the expense of your citizens. 7, please expedite the repeal of the Public Order Act. In line with this, I want to report to you that the Citizens First has written to the European Union, we have written to the American Embassy, we have written to the British High Commission, we have explained and expressed our disquiet over the silence of these very strategic partners, over the many excesses that have been going on under the UPND leadership. And copies are there. You can have copies of what we wrote to those embassies. And meetings are beginning to roll out. Starting next week, Tuesday, we'll be having meetings with these same embassies so that we explain in person the kind of government we have. Very repressive government. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, I want to thank you for your attention, and I can only hope that together we'll help address and dispel rhetoric as we continue being the voice of consciousness and amplifying issues that pertain to the welfare of the citizens of this country. With your support, we will continue to provide checks and balances and rid any corrupt and repressive elements in the governance of this nation. God bless you, and may He bless this, our Republic of Zambia. I thank you. I think we're very clear they don't have.
So you can identify yourself, give your name, the media organization you are representing, then you ask a question. You may also make your question to what you have discussed.
Even what I have not discussed is fine.
You can ask anything.
Yeah, it's okay.
So we'll start with the question on the left. Identify yourself, the organization, and then ask the question. President, you talk about the so about that Thank you. We have another question.
Close association with the president.
Yes. My question to this would be, would you be in a position to identify those that are close to the president and are involved in corruption and yet nothing is happening? And then, still on that same one, you said the only people that are interested are those from the previous government. My question to you is that...
They should not only pursue those, but they should also pursue those in the current government.
Okay, so the question then is that is indeed a good start to see that what happened previously is being pursued, while what is currently pending is also being will be looked at a later stage.
Thank you.
The third question, then the president will answer.
The sixth
Then we'll
question.
come back to another round of three.
I just want to get your perspective. The president during the dream was referring to a graph indicating that the graph is increasing a reflection of his administration's economic data in terms of reviving the economy. What would you have to say about that and the citizens' take?
The graph is increasing as a result of a reflection that they're doing well. Patrick, I'll start with you. Patrick, I think the president must begin taking even ordinary Zambians seriously. That graph he was presenting was for the elitists. Those of you who have done algebra will have understood that graph, which was explaining. What about those who have not had the opportunity? And that is why the problem of this government is. They focus so much on rich people. They focus so much on those who are educated. And the uneducated are not taken care of at all. Because that graph was basically telling you that if you don't understand it and you are in Shangombo, you are in Kaputa, wherever you are, forget. Me, I have brought the graph. That's what you did. The truth of the matter is that that graph does not represent what he was saying, our president. No. And where, you know, sometimes even when you are elogizing yourself, I think you should do it with a measure of humility. He says from 1973, look, there were all these things which were being made. And I took time to listen, though I was dozing in between because of the graph. But I took time to listen, just to understand and speak to facts as the president was speaking. And clearly you can say the president is not in touch with reality.
No.
He is not in touch with reality. That is why he brought that graph. Because we expected the president to talk real issues of how he is going to deal with middlemen in the agriculture sector. How he is going to deal with mechanized agriculture. How he was going to deal with... That's what we expected the president to bring to the fore. But all those things could not come up. But the graph was what we saw. Would you be in a position to identify those close to the president who should be pursued? I think that is not my job. All I'm saying is that you also know, my brother, that there have been companies that have been winning tenders, companies that have been close to the president. They are there. You know that? Yes, in the public domain. You also know that there are those who are supplying fertilizer in this country who have been perceived to be close to the president. And no one is talking. We are all just sitting, and now you're asking me to be identifying them. You know, the examples are many. But we are just asking the president to say what is good for the goose should also be good for the gander. Therefore, let's be fair in the application of the law. Don't talk about the rule of law for others, and on the other people are looking the other side. It's not correct. It's not what it should be. Then you said, isn't it a good idea to pursue what was happening in the past and then you do later what is happening now? I think the fight against corruption must be holistic. It must be fought from all fronts and angles. You don't have to say, no, we just concentrate on this and then these others, we leave them. Everybody should be checked through. We know what is happening. We know what's happening at FRA. We would want the president to take interest in how maize has been finding itself out of this country. We know a lot. We know what is happening in all these ministries. We want the president to take interest so that even his own ministers, he should not be the one justifying them. You saw that he's the one, when people had raised issues over his Minister of Foreign Affairs, you saw how the president defended him at a press briefing, where you were, I want to believe, where he said, I asked him, and he said he didn't follow what you people are accusing him. So what can I do? If that is how investigations are done, then we wish the president well. How do you describe yesterday's press briefing? Yesterday's press briefing was very hollow. It was hollow. It didn't touch what people wanted. And I don't even know why the president appeared yesterday on... why he even addressed the nation. Yeah. Because there was nothing that the president was talking about to have necessitated him to appear before the nation. We were all hoping that he was going to talk about issues of KCM and Mopani. He didn't. We were hoping the president was going to demystify the fears of our farmers who did soya beans. He didn't. We were hoping the president was going to tell us how he was going to do job creation and ensure that our youths are put in that bracket. He didn't. All he was talking about, according to him, is that graph, the economy, how it has been going down from 1973 up to the time where he is now. When I say people are joking, you say no. These are jokes that we are saying, proper jokes. I think I've answered your question.
Another 3 questions, another 3 rounds.
And why is it always? Yes. Morning.
Am I allowed to ask the question?
Even 10.
It's not a huge of joking question. You said it, you answer any question.
Thank you so much. On the life expectancy that you can't move, I would love to understand how, as citizens, that you are in government, corporate government, how will you handle such sometimes the unemployment level of unemployment is quite high, and life expectancy, and then there is famine age. How would you harmonize this so that the way state regulations goes? That is done something with the then there are also those others that are coming, like this is we have local colleges now, local universities, and local institutions. So, Amalo, Komaria, Variation, so how would you fight balance? How would you do that? Like a different the second thing is of late the online taxi drivers
Look, again, I'll start with you. First of all, with NAPSA, I think it is very straightforward that once people begin getting their monies, NAPSA's capacity to invest will not be constant, because obviously the investment portfolio will have been tampered with, and so they will not invest as much. But also, secondly, you will agree with me that even that one who has withdrawn his or 20% partial payment, they will now remain with 80%. The levels of interest they will accrue from NAPSA will not be as the same as it could have been if they had maintained their 100% portfolio investment with NAPSA. So obviously there will be a problem there. And because of this NAPSA partial payment, we in the Citizens First are only saying that what government should have done is not basically to begin encouraging citizens to be eating part of their investments. Because as we said last time in the last press briefing, people's energies to work are obviously impaired as they grow older. And so we expected government to bring in incentives. Like we explained last time, we thought government was asking us for alternatives. We said, why don't you bring in the issues of debt swap for your employees? I mean, for employees in parastatal institutions, quasi-government institutions, and even government institutions. Why don't you bring in those kind of measures to enable them free themselves from those loans while keeping their investment portfolio for the future, as opposed to what we are seeing now, where you are encouraging them to eat their own pension, which is, it looks good now, it looks glamorous now. And I'm telling you the truth that with time, I am not a Jewish prophet, nor am I related to any, but you will agree with me that what I'm saying, because you record this, that indeed there was somebody who told us that this action that government took looked creamy from a distance, but when you poke yourselves in there, you will discover that this is not an idea government should have pursued in the beginning. Then we talked about the issue of maize production might be low this year. I think there will be a challenge, of course, and coupled with that, because of the mismanagement of the agriculture sector, we have said in the Citizens First that agriculture must be looked at from a very holistic perspective. Government must make a deliberate policy in ensuring that if the cost of production in agriculture is cheaper, then you don't even have to give farmers a gigantic figure for you to say they spend a lot of money. Let them access the fertilizer cheaply. That's why we in the Citizens First have been proposing that we need to recapitalize NCZ. We need to give it life. Not only that, because at the time NCZ was in place, the population of Zambia was only about 4 million, 5 million people. Now we are 20 million human beings. So what needs to happen now is that we need to allow another form of NCZ in Ndola, another form of NCZ in Kasama, another form of NCZ in all the 10 provinces. And with that done, now I'm answering most of the questions that we're asking, because that is married with this. Our proposal as Citizens First has always been beginning to industrialize our nation. And we cannot start from a gigantic perspective. We can start even small. We can even start with making sacks for ourselves. Because currently the sacks we are using for maize and for what, they're coming from China. We need to begin making and value adding those things ourselves. Once we do that, even the job and wealth question we're talking about will immediately be dealt with. Even the inflationary spiral that the Bank of Zambia was talking about, it can only be addressed, dealt with aggressively, if we have an economy that is functioning. Right now, even the kwacha it's appreciating more for cosmetic reasons rather than for real reasons. As a result of that, the kwacha and the economy keeps on having shocks from time to time. So the Bank of Zambia will keep on giving you gigantic jumps in figures, but the truth of the matter is that we need to be a productive economy. We can't continue being a consumptive economy. If we begin producing for ourselves, and it starts small, by encouraging soya beans growers, grow more, because now we'll be making soya chunks. We'll be value adding. Bring in an investor. And we have said as Citizens First, it is easy to do it. It is for you to bring in an investor. An investor, if the investor is not there, government can even start it on its own, or government can do a PPP where they can work with the private sector. If the private sector is not available to go in with government, government can go it alone. Then with time, government can begin releasing shares on Lusaka Stock Exchange. People begin buying shares. And you have now people naturally buying into that investment. We can do that for our soya beans growers. We need to have an investor who will be looking at soya beans as something they can go in aggressively, because government will have given them incentives. Incentives should not just be limited to those in the mining sector. They can also go to areas like that, because we know that we've got a population surrounding us of about 500 million human beings. When you put the Congo, Angola, the Namibians, the Botswanans, the Tanzanians, we are well over 700 million people. So we should take advantage of our geographical disposition to market ourselves. Now, if you are discouraging the soya beans growers by saying they should find for themselves the where to sell market, I think that's a careless statement. It's a very careless statement that the president made. Why? Because are you encouraging the soya beans growers? Government has been buying soya beans. Why has government been buying soya beans? It has got a historical perspective to it. We want to begin making cooking oil in this country. We want to open up an industry for cooking oil. We want to begin making soya chunks. We are the only country that is fond of soya chunks, and yet the soya chunks are coming from Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Namibia. We should graduate from that. So by us allowing soya bean growers to begin selling to the Malawans, the Zimbabweans and other neighboring countries, we are basically shipping jobs from Zambia, taking them to other countries. And then we are crying wolf when we see a puppy that how come we don't have jobs in this country? You don't have jobs because you have taken them out there. We in the citizens first are going to make sure that we bring in a deliberate policy to allow soya bean growers, to allow even tobacco growers, to allow indigenous farmers in this country to have incentives of various sorts. Of course, the incentive that the soya bean growers will have might not be the same with those growing maize, but they should feel comfortable going in that sector, knowing that government is watching their back. You can't have a government telling you, go and search for yourself. It's a shame indeed. So I want to believe that by me going far in this, I've explained the relation between the life expectancy as well as the unemployment and all that kind of thing, because those things work in tandem. If people are working, people are able to seek medical services. If you can seek medical services, it means that where you should have had pneumonia, you prevent it. Your life prolongs. Where you can prevent tuberculosis, you prevent it because you went for medical checkup. Because you've got the power to expend, you are able to do those facilities. That is what we're talking about ourselves. We want to go back to the glorious days where each province had an industry functioning. We'll even go beyond that. We want to do the Chinese model, where in China every compound, Mtendere should have had 2 industries. You go to Kalikiriki, there's an industry. You go to, and this country has got a lot of things. Today, for instance, we are importing ceramic tiles. Many people don't know that we used to have our own ceramic tiles companies in this country. We had Zambia Ceramics, we had more pottery. But today we are going to China to import ceramic tiles. And we think that is the way it should be. The same with duvets. We used to make duvets in this country, in Livingstone. Yeah. Today we are importing them in, and we think that is good. We who are seeking for leadership of this country must begin to understand the history of this country properly, not just presenting graphs. We need to begin understanding the history of this country, how this country was doing at the time it was there, because this is a country where Namibians were coming. This is a country where Botswanans, our neighboring people used to come to Zambia to buy things from here, because we are producing tires, we are producing almost everything. And so we were a strong economy. And that is why the Citizens First is going to take this country, because we are practical, never rhetoric.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I hope we have answered your question. Thank you very much. So we have
which one?
All the online.
It's an issue that I even talked about here in the press. I think I touched it. We need to harmonize Yango and the owners of those ordinary taxis. I think the complaint you are raising, or the question you are raising, is about Yango online drivers complaining and how government intends to deal with that. As I was trying to say earlier on, we are a country that is moving with technology. You have the Ministry of Science and Technology here. I would have wanted to believe that the Ministry of Science and Technology and the Ministry of Transport should have already begun sitting down to have a face-to-face discussion and craft a policy, because some of these things are just emanating now. But because nobody is interested in sitting down with them to find hands-on solutions, this problem keeps on getting exacerbated. It keeps on growing. And they'll cry for as much as they can because nobody's listening to them. All that our leaders are interested in is to talk good about themselves. So if I was the president, I would have taken interest already now to sit down with those drivers, hear them, where their plight is, what challenge they are having. So, Mr. President, here's the alternative we're giving you. Call these drivers who are complaining. Sit down with them, hear their plight, and see how best you can help them. They're not asking for money from you. They're only asking about what policy framework they can operate effectively in. Thank you.
Mr. President, people of the Coca-Cola as well as Mutani, established the president as this government has perhaps called to include or to end the discussion between stakeholders and the other important issues. Mr. President, the livelihood of the copper belt depends on KCN as well as mechanics. Poverty levels in the copper belt can never get an answer because they go. What will you do, you person, in addressing the issues, critical issues that KCN is facing as well as mechanics? Mr. President, just a few days ago, I went in the copper belt. I can't see any economic activity in terms of mining or the copper belt.
The biggest problem that is happening on the copper belt, or the biggest challenge that you find on the copper belt, is that the leaders are insincere, starting from the president. They are insincere with the problems that are happening on the copper belt, and I dealt with that issue. For as long as they will not be sincere with the issues happening around Mopani, around Konkola copper mines, hypocrisy, if that's what we want to call it, will continue happening. Nothing is going to happen. What is required there is to face the investor, whether you like them or not. Have the courage and tell them, I'll choose my people instead of you. But I can't do that. It's as simple as all that. I'm telling you the truth. It's just to look in the face of whichever contractor there on the copper belt and tell them, this will not work. If it is in court, fine. For us, we are going to proceed in this manner, because we want to give relief to our people on the copper belt. The people are suffering because it is Mopani, it is Konkola copper mines that define the lives of the people of Mufurira, Chilabombwe, Chingola, Nkitwe. It is those mines. But to have a gigantic press conference like the one he had, and sure, not even talk about the issues of the copper belt, tells you. There you go. I'm happy that you recorded it. 1 minute seconds. A big problem like that on the copper belt, it's very sad. But I can tell you what is happening there basically is because in the evenings, they are sitting with those people they should be dealing with. Then during the day, they wear a different jacket. There is a saying in English, never be too friendly with the bird you are going to eat, because you will not eat it. You fail to administer your office properly. If in the night you are saying, no, give me that champagne, then during the day you think you'll find reasons of going around the issues. You have seen from the way this government has been behaving, that is why they have given tax incentives. The first thing they did within 3 weeks of being elected is to give tax incentives to the owners of those mines, even before they could even investigate how they could stop financial slippages. They chose to first of all say, you are paying too much in taxes. That's what they did. You are paying too much in taxes, therefore we are going to put you for 5 years with your tax holiday.
Shame.
Pay less tax. Because the mines now are paying less taxes, the UPND government, than they were paying before. You call that frugal in the management of a nation's affairs or resources? The people of the Copper Belt are basically suffering because there is no leadership. If there was leadership, like the one which is talking here, those issues would not have even gone on like that. Those issues cannot go on like that. I'm telling the truth, they can't. They can't. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much for coming and for your attention. We're going to close the first meeting with a prayer. Bishop,
Shall we pray? Thank you, my Creator. Thank you for everything, mighty God. Thank you, my Savior, for this press conference. Continue to be with us, so God, even as we are departing from this place, I plead the blood of your Son, Jesus, to cover each and every person. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
please come again when we call upon you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the pen.